Great guest with us tonight. Still joining us, former senior Scientology official, author of the book A Billion Years, Mike Rinder's still with us. And joining us now in New York City, psychotherapist, host of Talking Live on Facebook Watch and the Bite Side podcast, Dr. Robi Ludwig. Mike, let me start with you. I read the statement from the Church of Scientology. They are saying that the church policy explicitly demands Scientologists abide by all laws of the land.
Yes, but what they're not telling or not saying, and this is a typically evasive statement from Scientology, you know, I used to make them on behalf of Scientology all the time, is that it is a high crime. I mentioned earlier, misdemeanors, crimes, and high crimes. It is a high crime, and I'm going to read this to you from the book that the Defendants Council put into evidence, reporting or threatening to report Scientology or Scientologists to civil authorities in an effort to suppress Scientology or Scientologists from practicing or receiving standard Scientology, and delivering up the person of a Scientologist without justifiable defense or lawful protest to the demands of civil or criminal law. Those are high crimes in Scientology. And for Scientology to make a statement saying that we don't discourage people going to law enforcement is absolutely 100% categorically untrue. That is the pattern and practice. There isn't a the current Scientologists will tell you, oh no, that's not true, because they're told to say, oh no, that's not true. There isn't a former Scientologist in the world who would not stand up and say, if anything happened, the first place I was expected to report was to Scientology, and specifically to the Office of Special Affairs, which is what I used to be the head of, and that matters then would be taken over and controlled entirely by Scientology. That means, were you going to go make a report to the police? Hold on. We're going to take care of this internally, because if you get into the hands of the criminal justice system, you know what Hubbard says about that. That's terrible. And we're the only ones that can actually help resolve this situation, so we'll take care of it. That is what happens in Scientology. That is what happened to these three women, and that is why they didn't report immediately to law enforcement.
Dr. Robi Ludwig, put us into the minds of the accusers here, right? So, you know, you're a member of this church. You're a member of society as well. And everyone knows rape is rape. I think everyone understands that concept pretty clearly. No means no if I don't give my consent, etc. So what's the internal struggle with potential influences from a church versus, hey, I've been violated. I need to do something about this?
Well, the women might have felt going to the church was a way to deal with it until they found it wasn't effective. And people who are part of a community don't want to be excommunicated. They want to be loved. They want to be approved of. So the thought of going against a church or church member is probably a very disturbing idea. But when someone is raped, that's a big deal. It gets a woman to feel devalued. She can self-loathe herself and feel post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a need for resolution, and there's a need to be heard. So if that isn't going to happen within the church, then they are rightfully so going to go outside of the church. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And they might have felt that the church was not viewing women in the correct way. I mean, there is this idea of rape culture, which sees women as not really having a voice. They should be submissive. Maybe they should accept whatever men want to do with them, or they take responsibility for causing the crime. So I think it's great and very brave of these women that they went outside of their community, which I'm sure they were very attached to, in order to share their important story for healing and for justice.
All right, guests are staying with us. We're going to talk more about what's happening in L.A. right now, the trial of Danny Masterson, a former star of that 70s show, accused of the rape of 3 women. We'll be right back.
I think people will really enjoy, Rooster and Colt on this show because it's 2 brothers who, they want to kill each other, but, they both take a bullet for the other one. And I think people enjoy that.
That's a little promo clip from the Netflix series The Ranch. Danny Masterson was in it until he wasn't. His character was written out, but it kind of coincided with all of the controversy and what he's facing now in Los Angeles, which are rape charges. Still with us, Mike Rinder, former senior Scientology official, author of the book A Billion Years, and Dr. Robi Ludwig, psychotherapist as well. Mike, anytime we talk about Scientology, we're always talking about celebrities, but the accusers in this case, not celebrities. There's a lot of other people in the church, aren't there? Why is it that we're always talking about celebrities when we're talking about the Church of Scientology?
Well, Vinny, it's because Scientology places enormous importance on celebrities. Hubbard in the 50s said that celebrities should be targeted by Scientology to get them involved because they create positive public relations for Scientology. People tend to follow their lead. So if you can get a big celebrity involved in Scientology and saying how wonderful it is, that will encourage other people to join Scientology. This was a pretty successful strategy, frankly. I mean, it's not silly. It works. The problem today, though, is with the amount of information available about Scientology, there are very, very few people who these days come newly into Scientology. It is shrinking, and that's primarily due to the internet. Information kills cults, and information is broadly available. You Google Scientology, you Google any part of the subject, and you're going to get nowadays a lot of information that is pretty disturbing. And so, you haven't seen any new big name Scientologists come up or appear in the last decade at least. Perhaps the only prominent Scientology celebrity to emerge in the last decade is Elizabeth Moss, but of Handmaid's Tale. But she was raised a Scientologist, so she didn't come in newly. I hope that answers your question. I just wanted to add to something that Dr. Ludwig said before the break.
Absolutely.
The point in Scientology about you cause your own situation cannot be overstressed. The wording in Scientology is, what did you do to pull it in? The concept in Scientology that Hubbard came up with is, if something bad happens to you, then you have done something bad to someone else that's similar to that in order to be craving that you are punished for what you have done previously. And that can go back to previous lifetimes. So if someone claims that they were raped or beaten up by someone, run over by a car, the question that gets asked by Scientology of them is, when did you rape someone? When did you run someone over with a car? When did you beat someone up? It is the absolute epitome of victim blaming. And it is very, very dictated by the practices, principles, and teachings of L. Ron Hubbard, which lay this out in excruciating detail. Again, every Scientologist that you ask and you say, what does it mean when you say, what did you do to pull this in? Every single one of them will give you the same answer. I did something that caused me to have the bad effect that I now have, and it was similar to the bad effect that I have received.
Dr. Robi Ludwig, I saw you nodding your head along. I'll give you the final word tonight on all of this. Go ahead.
So think about that if you are an opportunistic rapist, right? You wouldn't see yourself as a rapist or committing a crime. You would see yourself as having sex with somebody who might be unconscious, or they came to your room, or of course they wanted to have sex with you. There's an entitlement there. There's not seeing the will of the woman. It's saying she wanted it and I gave it to her and I'm entitled to it and she sexually aroused me. So, and especially if there's a relationship there wouldn't be this understanding that rape can happen under those circumstances. So you have this perfect storm for a crime to be committed.
Well, I want to say a big thank you. Mike Rinder, the book is A Billion Years. Give us like 30 seconds on what you get into this book, because I'm sure people watching now are very fascinated by your experience.
Well, Vinny, it is the story of my life and how I got into and my experiences within Scientology and how I ultimately escaped and what has happened subsequently. And it is my hope that people will read it and understand that anybody can be persuaded to do things that are against their best interests if they believe strongly enough in something that is promised.
And Dr. Robi Ludwig, I'd like you to just respond to that in like 15 seconds before we run out of time, that level of influence that a church can have on us.
Yeah, we want to believe in a religion that helps us make sense of our lives. And if we are following people who don't consider the rights of others or manipulate certain beliefs for their own benefits, that's a problem. And I think we can see that in many different scenarios where people are almost brainwashed to believe certain things and they act in accordance with that belief system that doesn't serve them well or really other people well outside of their environment.
Dr. Robi Ludwig, Mike Rinder, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much. Great insight.
Thank
and
you.
of course, we'll continue to track Danny Masterson's trial out in Los Angeles.